Greetings, dear viewers. Anthony Mars Jr. on Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film with a brand new episode of the Terra podcast, bringing you episode 324. Presented by Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Facebook group. Haven't joined? Check it out now. I've been wanting to talk about something related to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the last couple years, even in the years after I had no longer did do this podcast anymore. I remember back when a favorite Power Ranger YouTuber of mine, Rick, the barkeep of the Onyx Tavern, did a video about the Mighty Morphin Trinity of Jason, Trini, and Zack a couple years ago, back in like 2017 or so. And I remember thinking back to everything he said about if the course of Power Rangers history was altered and if the three, Austin, Thuy, and Walter had never left. But I wanted to take my spin and take on this because this has been on my head for the last couple of days following my Future of Streaming Power Rangers video. And for today's episode, I want to talk about the Mighty Morphin Trinity. I don't want to talk about the whole team of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in general, but I just only want to bring up the original 3 of the original 6. And thinking about if the rest of season 2 and all of season 3 and the course of Power Rangers with Zeo and Turbo was to be changed, if those 3 were to still be around. The original Mighty Morphin team is, of course, be hailed as one of the greatest Power Ranger teams of all time, or if not the only greatest Power Ranger team of all time. And I just thought about that, thinking back to the power transfer and Tommy's reintroduction of the White Ranger, and following the inclusions of Rocky M and Aisha replacing the original 3, I was thinking about some theories that I wished that if this part of Power Rangers was to be changed and was to be altered, and just thinking about how Haim Saban was with the production of Power Rangers, because when the Power Rangers began in the early 90s, around 1993, 1994, the show was not union, as in, actors that were not part of the Screen Actors Guild, and they were working, if you're part of that non-union, you would work probably like long labor hours on some particular, especially in the entertainment business, if you're doing something non-union. But I don't really know much about how this stuff works because I'm not even in the entertainment business, and so I can't really say for that personally. But I kind of do wish that if Power Rangers was to be union from the start and not be completely non-union, as in casting a bunch of unknowns, which they have to, because knowing that the franchise was relatively unknown, but when the show blew up in popularity with lucrative toy sales and with the show in itself, and how the show performed and how it was a complete pop culture phenomenon for the 90s. I mean, the show was making huge numbers in the ratings and toy sales and everything else. Kids would go to school talking about how the Power Rangers were kicking ass and doing cool and stuff. But then once, when the show was doing so good during its first season, the show was unexpected and unbridled show, with all of that unexpected success coming out of the hands of the person who created the show, Haim Saban, with Power Rangers being an adaptation of Super Sentai, which is a Japanese superhero show of the same concept of people with these multicolored suits with these powers, and then they have the giant robots to form the Megazord. Well, actually, the Megazord for Power Rangers, Mecha for that term in Sentai, and facing the monsters of the week and the rest of the concepts for both Power Rangers and Sentai. But it seemed that by the time we got to the second season of Power Rangers, the show was still popular as ever, but because again, by the second season, ratings for Power Rangers went off the roof, and then toy sales skyrocketed like even crazier by season 2, and following the introduction of a new villain, that being Lord Zed. And when they got the Thunder Zords, and when Tommy was slowly losing his Green Ranger powers, at least they had to figure a way how to resolve the Green Ranger issue. Because again, for those who didn't watch the Japanese version or don't care for Sentai, I'll give you a spoiler alert why Tommy lost his Green Ranger powers in the 2 seasons of Mighty Morphin when he had the powers? Well, simply, in the original Sentai of Mighty Morphin, that being Kiryu Sentai Zyuranger, Burai, the Dragon Ranger, had died, and there was some stuff with him in there that I don't want to talk about. I don't want to go full-blown religious about it, because that series, Zyuranger was very heavy on some biblical references with that stuff about with the afterlife and death and stuff. And yeah, Sentai was very hardcore in the 90s with Sentais like Zyuranger, but Saban decided for the Power Rangers adaptation of the Green Ranger's character that Tommy would just lose the powers, and then he would regain the powers and then lose the powers again. And how they solved the issue, once Sentai had already moved beyond Zyuranger with Dai Ranger and Kaku Ranger, well, by 1994, Mighty Morphin Season 1 was almost halfway finished airing, and by the summer of 94, Season 2 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers would begin, and especially primetime, no less. So Sentai at that point in 1994 had already moved on to Kaku Ranger, and Saban was about to run out of Zyuranger stuff, and they were about to they were already doing their own Sentai footage with Toei in the form of Zoo 2, and then when all the Zoo 2 stuff was almost close to being running out, then they would have to focus on adapting only the Zord footage for the next Super Sentai, that being Dai Ranger. And then they would also have to figure a way how to keep Tommy around, because he was such a popular character. And so they had to come up with a transition of Tommy being the Green Ranger to the White Ranger, and the White Ranger being from a totally different Sentai to match the style of MMPR. But once they solved the issue with Tommy, and with fans been wanting, kids at the time wanting Tommy to come back, then when they brought him back as the White Ranger, but then they have to figure out an issue with the 3 that were, with our big first ever but controversial cast departure in Power Rangers, with Jason, Zack, and Trini leaving the show. It's been widely documented by everywhere you go with Power Rangers, from Ranger Wiki to the actors of, Austin St. John and Walter Jones themselves in interviews, and everything else you can think of, even among us, in the fandom, about why did Austin and Thuy and Walter had left the series. Well, it's no common and no stranger to a lot of us that, while Power Rangers was successful after its first great start to a season, and then going into your second year of episodes and these characters, then all of a sudden, 3 of the original 6 want to leave the show. But again, the show was very, again, due to the low pay and stuff, because it's been widely known that the Mighty Morphin cast, well, the first cast of MMPR was paid pretty poorly, because it's no joke that Saban, while he's for so long as I can recall about hearing about Haim Saban and hearing his name all the time, Haim Saban, he's supposed to be a billionaire, trillionaire TV producer and creator and such all the time, but whenever you hear his name pop up, you think, oh, Haim Saban, he's rich, and he produces a bunch of TV shows and stuff, that mostly TV shows catered toward children. And then, of course, some TV shows, and movies cater toward adults. But when I just thought about the way how the cast of MMPR was treated during the first and a half year going into the second year, and thinking about the amount of pay per episode and long workload hours filming Power Rangers, though, of course, you have to make way with whatever Sentai footage they're using for all 60 episodes of Season 1 and half a chunk of Season 2 with the Zoo 2 and, a little bit of Dai Ranger footage stuff. And it's no surprise that Saban really screwed the pooch with Austin, Thuy, and Walter, and knowing the fact they all wanted more money, and it seemed like, yes, we have to confirm it, and indeed, in fact, this was, of course, over money. But it was also contract disputes that also got in the way. It's very uncommon that it's sad and very disappointing for those 3 to leave, but if those 3 were to still stay around and still resume their roles as the original red, black, and yellow Rangers, we could have still seen them still pilot the Thunder Zords when they still had them, and we would just hold off to Rocky, Adam, and Aisha, throughout like season 2 and season 3, and then if they ever did got to adapt Zeo, they would make way for Jason, Zack, and Trini to depart that way. And because, okay, here's the theory, and this is something that I thought about before I recorded the video, because when Saban was doing Power Rangers, and especially during the Mighty Morphin era, the cast was treated well, fairly somewhat well, but then you had half of the original 6 that felt a little ungrateful, that they were underpaid and they were not getting as much. And on the fact the show was so popular that with the contracts that they had, they were obligated to appear in stage shows. Then when they were about to do the movie, Jason, Zack, and Trini could have appeared in the movie along with Tommy, Kimberly, and Billy, with Tommy being the White Ranger, of course, after he was no longer the Green Ranger. So, but then also my theory was, I'll do a similar video about MMPR, the movie, in a different way if it was part of canon or so, or save that for a top 10 video or a top 5 video about how to fix MMPR, the movie kind of video. But we'll get to that some other video in that video series, or this, because I just wish that Saban didn't do them the way they did. But it makes understandable sense, because the cast was working hellish amount of hours. That's why they were getting less pay, but yet Saban was making more money, and the show was making more money than the cast was. But I don't want to go into a complete deep dive of how this stuff works, but I just thought about, the fact that a lot of people who love the original 6 together, and then seeing those three leave, and only leaving the remaining original 3 of the 6, and then with the new 3, I mean, nothing against Rocky, M, and Aisha, but I just want to do a what if Jason, Zack, and Trini never left after Tommy had gained the White Ranger power from Zordon. Okay, so let's start around when Lord Zed was about to, create his, fully flesh out his Dark Ranger concept, because everybody knows his Zed's Dark Ranger concept didn't work back in the Green No More 2-parter, which was Tommy's final major episode of him being the Green Ranger, and when those powers were diminished by Lord Zed's kryptonite like crystal, green kryptonite like crystal, and once following his failure of the Dark Ranger concept, then as time went on, when Tommy left and when Tommy got his White Ranger powers back by White Light, I just wish that in the following episodes when they were going to do this stuff, that I wish that Jason, Zack, and Trini were still voiced by their original actors and not by those god-awful voice dubbers and the stand-ins and stuff, because, when you do watch the episodes that didn't include Jason, Zack, and Trini fully shot with original new footage alongside Billy, Tommy, and Kimberly, watching those episodes now, 26, 27, 28 some years later, is very, very awkward, because every time you hear those voices of Zack, Jason, and Trini's dubbers and stand-ins in the episodes following Tommy's reintroduction of the White Ranger, and with Zed about to unleash Serpent Terra, it just felt very weird hearing their voices being so awkwardly dubbed. And whenever I do hear the dubbers for those 3, I cringe. Does anyone have that same feeling? Because whenever I do, it's so cringe, I don't even know how to highly think of this anymore. And it's like, I wish that those 3 would have stayed on and battled Lord Zed's remaining monsters when they were already fully going into the Die Ranger Zord and monster footage. And of course, the reason why that the Mighty Morphin suits, the Zoo Ranger Mighty Morphin suits, were never changed for season 2 or so going forward is because, well, Power Rangers was widely popular by this point, season 2, by the way. And due to the fact that the Mighty Morphin suits were so became so recognizable overnight over the course of the 1.5 year going on 2 at the time, that Saban insisted on keeping the Zoo Ranger Mighty Morphin suits for brand consistency. And this is why the Mighty Morphin suits are considered one of the most iconic and most popular suit designs of all the Power Rangers and all of pop culture. Thus, but with the fact that when they had the Die Rangers footage and stuff, they could have did the suits if they were alternate suits, but of course I'm happy they still kept the suits that they had for MMPR, that being the diamond-shaped dinosaur suits lifted from Zoo Ranger, because those suits are still recognizable and still iconic. But of course, if they change the suits to the Die Ranger or Kaku Ranger suits, Power Rangers would be somewhat less, would lose their popularity very quick. But I'll probably delve into that a little bit, probably in another episode or so. But in general, though, but at the point when Lord Zedd was about to unleash Serpent Terra upon the universe, maybe if when they did the power transfer, maybe instead of doing the cast change, maybe the power transfer could have been like, okay, if Tommy got a new Ranger suit, what if the main 5 had the Die Ranger suits? But again, I'll delve into that as a sneak preview for that episode. But of course, following those episodes, but then how they're going to bring back Rita into the fold, and then, well, Rita and Zedd's marriage can still happen, and Rita and Zedd would still be married, and Jason, Zack, and Trini never went to that peace conference. And I know that in the Boom Studio comics that Jason, Zack, and Trini didn't go to the peace conference. Instead, they became a new team of Power Rangers that was very small, of course, known as the Omega Rangers. But although I haven't delved into the comics, because knowing how I am as a Power Rangers fan, in this small dark minority here, but they did become the Omega Rangers, and Rocky, Am, and Aisha took over the original 3 of the 6 spot as the new Red, Black, and Yellow Rangers. But we're talking about what was done in the television show continuity and how this could have affected and changed the course of the Ranger multiverse. But we could still have Rocky, Am, and Aisha somewhere in the show, but just save them for another season or later when going into season 3 and possibly Zeo, and how this would have been changed. And also with Catherine and with, her inclusion into the franchise. But of course, and also when they did do Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, they could still do Ivan Ooze and all the stuff they did in the movie, but and Tommy still being the White Ranger. The movie, despite it being not canon to the television show because of the story and placement, due to the continuity and story placement with the TV show versus the movie and the aesthetic choices and whatnot, and also the setting. Jason, Zack, and Trini was supposed to be in the movie as their original colors. But then, of course, again, if the movie was to be tied to the television show, Ivan Ooze would still be a part of, and if Ivan Ooze was part of the TV show and not being part of that movie dimension and such, personally, things would have been ran smoothly, and suppose the movie was a transitional point for season, from the end of season 2, beginning season 3. But since, we already know as the history of Power Rangers is all we know it, what we ended up getting was what we ended up getting. But this is this is a what if, but in the alternate universe from our universe right now, from what had precedented back in 1994, 1995, going forward to where we are in 2021 with Power Rangers and how things could have been. And, okay, so Tommy becomes the White Ranger. He had the Tiger Zord and Saba and such for some time. And some episodes down the line later, episodes like Zed Waves and the Ninja Encounter would still happen. And instead of calling that two-parter where the 3 new teens that would replace Jason, Zack, and Trini would have been called something else differently. Instead of calling it the power transfer, it could have been the rise of Terra or something instead of the power transfer. They could have just saved the power transfer for like season 3 or something, but they would still do the ninja stuff. But or save the power transfer until like the end of season 2, or I mean, I know it's very befuddling and confusing to say. Rita and Zed's wedding would still take effect, with the wedding 3-parter. The Return of the Green Ranger 3-parter would still happen if Jason, Zack, and Trini were still around. Rocky, Adam, and Aisha would still be like there, but still helping out the Rangers and being allies, much like how Richie and Curtis was, as again, as the red herrings for the White Ranger thing. But some other episodes in late season 2, like Best Man on the Job, if that episode happened, if those 3 was still around, Austin, Thuy, and Walter's characters were still around in that episode, and I almost wonder how Jason would have reacted with Tommy being under an evil spell again by both Rita and Zed, and with both Tommy and Kimberly bickering, arguing in that episode. I almost wonder what Jason would have said to Tommy about him fussing with Kimberly, but then they already would figure out, because Jason, Zack, and Trini have been on the team so long enough that knowing the fact each of the Rangers have gone through under spells or gone through multiple dimensions over the course of MMPR all the time. But seeing Lord Zed and Rita married, must wonder how that cause and domino effect would have been if Jason, Zack, and Trini was surprised that Rita and Zed got together. But knowing to the fact when Zordon informed the Rangers about Lord Zed's rise to prominence as the Emperor of all evil, overthrowing Rita's place on the Moon Palace and taking over and taking charge and retaliating against the Power Rangers and Zordon, that it would be weird and befuddling if Jason, Zack, and Trini found out that Rita did come back 40 episodes into season 2 later, if things were altered and changed. But Rocky, Adam, and Aisha would still take place in this point in season 2, but just not as Rangers, but as like secondary characters, setting up red herrings if those 3 were to leave somewhere near the end. But I guess we'll probably linger on Rocky, Adam, and Aisha a little too long as just secondary characters and not Rangers. They would be Rangers one day or someday. But and then other episodes from season 2. Would it be weird if that 2-parter or 3-parter Wild West Rangers happened differently if Jason, Zack, and Trini still stayed around? Kimberly goes back in time. Jason, Zack, and Trini, Tommy, and Billy were still in our time. Kimberly was sent to the Wild West dimension and found Wild West ancestors of Jason, Zack, and Trini, and not Rocky, Adam, and Aisha with Billy's Wild West ancestor. And Tommy would still be the White Stranger if this was still happening, if Jason, Zack, and Trini was still around. And I don't know what to call Jason, Zack, and Trini if they were in the Wild West dimension. And as much as we already know about Rocky, Adam, and Aisha's Wild West counterparts of Rocco, Abraham, and Alicia, respectively. But we don't know what to call Jason, Zack, and Trini in that dimension if Wild West Rangers was done in that vein. But maybe I just wish that they didn't prolong season 2 that long, because I get that they were very extensive with due to the cast change and also the crew, the cast doing the movie and stuff in Australia. But if they didn't stretch out season 2 a little too long, maybe they should have just did season 2 for about 45 episodes. And because I get it, due to the overkill of Saban firing the 3 in midway during the production of season 2, Mighty Morphin season 2, I just wish that they just could have cut season 2 a little short to about 45 episodes, and season 3 would have been the same number of length of episodes, and the course of Power Rangers would be a little altered. They would do the Kaku Ranger adaptation of Mighty Morphin a lot longer than it already should have been and what it already is, with the main course of MMPR taking up most of the Kaku Ranger Zord, Shogun Zord, Ninja Zord footage enough, and not much on the Alien Rangers. But then this begs the question of the course of Mighty Morphin season 3. Okay, season 3, like I said, if they did Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie totally different, but it could still be shot in Australia, and even if it has to be canon or not to the show, which of course the movie in itself still isn't, because the story and the story and visual aesthetic difference from the show to the movie, despite the movie had a bigger budget for the time than the TV show. The movie would have been a bridge gap between the end of season 2 to the beginning of season 3. And if the movie was to be in continuity with the TV show, but it can still be on a bigger budget cinematic scope for 1995, maybe the movie should have been the power transfer movie, where Rocky, Adam, and Aisha took over Jason, Zack, and Trini's spots in the movie. Because we already know that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie in itself, Rocky, Adam, and Aisha, well, they were very fresh new blood at the time. They didn't have much to do in the movie besides be around Tommy, Kimberly, and Billy in the film, despite that the movie was not canon. But I still enjoy Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. It still holds up in some places, but yeah, we know the CGI effects in the CGI Ninja Megazord sucks, and it's not good, even in today's standards. But I just kind of wish that maybe the movie should have been the power transfer, passing the torch kind of movie, and if they raised the stakes. But again, the writing for MMPR still wasn't there, because the show was still that cookie cutter 90s kid show fodder at the time with MMPR, even with Zeo and Turbo. But if the movie was done by Saban's crew, but it would still be distributed by 20th Century Fox, then the movie would have been like Turbo Power Rangers movie done right before Turbo Power Rangers movie even existed. And it would have been a more a seasonal bridge gap movie, as opposed to what the first movie we know and love already was. We could still have Ivan Ooze. We can still have some of the other stuff that the movie did. We could still have the armored ranger suit stuff, or just keep the spandex suits. But as much as I still like the movie suits and stuff, but if things for that movie was done differently instead of what it already was. But whatever. But okay, if Mighty Morphin season 3 was done in a way, if Jason, Zack, and Trini was still around. Okay, season 3 would have been done differently if we would just keep Rocky, Adam, and Aisha on a little longer as just secondary characters. The course of Power Rangers would still be, Power Rangers would still be popular if those 3 would still be around. Season 3, they would have the Ninja Zords, but then they would have to figure a way to transition from having the original Dino coins and the original powers and the Thunder Zords to the Ninja Zords. Or the movie could have been a transitional gap for all of that. If the movie was done in the budget, was done on a bigger budget, it would still act like the TV show completely, but not completely under complete control by 20th Century Fox, now known as 20th Century Studios, since, of course, Disney bought out Fox as of recently. But, they would do the Ninja Zords, but of course, Saban could have just got the original Ninja Megazord costume from Kaku Ranger. But again, if Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, was done completely differently compared to what we know of that movie as it is for the last more than 25 years now, and they would make it like the Turbo movie before the Turbo movie. If they had the original Ninja Megazord suit, they would integrate Rita Revolto prematurely into the movie, and Ninjor would be around prematurely and have him be a disciple of, have Dulcia be a disciple of Ninjor in the movie. I know this may sound like me rewriting the history of Power Rangers and with something that's not canonical to the TV show timeline, but if the movie again was still tied to the TV show timeline, and if all of this stuff that I'm bringing up, you get what I'm saying, it would have made Power MMPR's remaining half of season 2 and all of season 3 sound more interesting than it already is, I guess. But yeah, I've been seeing. Thinking back to all of the fan art and wish fulfillments fan art I've seen on Instagram and stuff, and all throughout the fandom about the what if Rocket, Jason, Zack, and Trini had the ninja powers alongside Tommy, Kimberly, and Billy, because knowing to the fact that once if they lost the Thunder Zords, I must wonder how Jason, Zack, and Trini would have reacted seeing the Thunder Zords being destroyed and lost their original powers, and alongside Tommy, Kim, and Billy as well. Yeah, they would be shocked. And the Ninja Quest would have been done differently if those three, Jason, Zack, and Trini was still with them. And I can see, like, okay, if, I can see how Jason, Zack, and Trini would have reacted about hearing about this Ninjor. Jason will be, would sound a little befuddled about the whole, who's Ninjor? Or maybe Zack would have said it if they were still around. They would go on the Ninja Quest alongside Tommy, Kimberly, and Billy, but then they would come across Jason, Zack, and Trini would have witnessed the Tangas for the first time. One of them would have questioned about, since Rita and Zed would still have their 1-year wedding anniversary up to this point in season 3, and Trini, Zack, and Jason will be befuddled about the transition of Zed and Rita no longer having the putties in favor of the Tangas, and if Rito had confronted the Rangers the way they were, if Jason, Zack, and Trini were still around, and things would have been done differently if, and then when they got the ninja powers finally, Trini would have the Bear Zord if she did, Zack would have the Frog Zord, and Jason would have the Ape Zord. But at least, if Zack was the bring up about the whole, man, why am I a frog? I mean, and everybody, it would be, Zack would be a lot like Adam when Adam had his ninja powers of the frog and stuff. But of course, in the movie, we know it was an iconic punchline in the movie to make fun, jab at Adam for being the frog. But what if it would have been if Zack had the frog Ninja Zord with the Black Ranger power and had a new power coin? He would still have the Mastodon helmet and the original Black Ranger suit, because we know in the TV show that the ninja powers are are complete upgrades and new spiritual ways to transform into their old suits, but still tied to the ninja coins. And then Jason would find it amusing that Zordon didn't find the power coins. Didn't create the power coins, that they found them. Ninjor, and then the three of the original 6, the entire original 6 Rangers would be astounded that Zordon didn't create the coins. And when Zordon would bring the exposition about Ninjor and his temple, that Ninjor was the one that created their powers and created the coins. And Jason, Zack, and Trini would find that very amusing. That, because, instead of them going to a stupid peace conference, they would have been astounded with this stuff during the Ninja Quest. Okay, but after that, and then the Ninja Quest, after they got the ninja powers and they got the Ninja Megazord, season 3 would have been like a raising the stakes, building up to the the United Alliance of Evil setup. Instead of having it being set up so early by the beginning of Zeo, Zordon would have brought up about this United Alliance of Evil thing that's being brought up and built up. The Machine Empire, 1995. Sentai had already moved on to O-Ranger at this point, and we were still on the 3rd season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers while adapting Kaku Ranger a year later, while Sentai was doing O-Ranger. You can bring up some building up a semblance of a potential threat after Rita and Zed, but the Rangers would still battle Rita and Zed nevertheless to the end. Rita and Zed would be what they were still in season 3 with them, with the big power struggle between the Rangers and them. And Rito being there, Rito would still be his stupid, idiotic skeletal self and being a tag team foil to Goldar. And Goldar would still be his season 3 Zeo such self if this was done differently in Power Rangers, if Jason, Zack, and Trini was still around. But then as for Rocky, Adam, and Aisha, they've been around. Okay, they would be like around at this point. They were not Rangers yet, and they were about to be built up as Rangers. And of course, with the thing with Aisha, if when they brought up about the Zeo Crystal, they would still do the Zeo Crystal stuff right around the Master Vial stuff. And also, if Kimberly didn't leave, Kimberly would have been on, would have witnessed Master Vial taking over Rita and Zed's space. Kimberly would still have the Crane Ninja Zord, and I know Amy Jo Johnson wanted to do something else, but if they still kept the original 6 team, the original 6 still together, Kimberly, along with Jason, Zack, and Trini, would have witnessed this battle that they had, still going on through with the big struggle with Rita and Zed's marriage and them with their biggest power struggle stake with the Power Rangers, and they got the Ninja Zords. Now, if they had the Shogun Zords, I don't know, maybe they should keep the Shogun Zords to the Alien Rangers. The Rangers of Aquitar would debut a little earlier than later in season 3. You would still have Ninjor and Dulcia around in the show, but if the movie was still like tied to the show, if the movie was to be tied to the TV show, but it's not. But I don't know what to do with Dulcia if she was brought on into the TV show, still be like a disciple to Ninjor, since Ninjor was the one that created the power coins, and instead of calling the ninja powers the Ninjetti, but again, if the movie was not its own thing, but it's still part of part of Power Rangers and its own separate continuity and all that, they would still call the ninja powers the ninja powers. It's just, that's what it was. But again, the Ninjetti, and due to the fact, well, legal reasons between Fox and Saban. If Jason, Zack, and Trini was still around, when Master Vile was happening and when they had the Shogun Zords, I don't know how they would react if, when Master Vile showed up in the introduction of the Zeo Crystal, they definitely would not get the metallic armor, because you know how the metallic armor was, right? Because we all know the metallic armor was only made just to sell leftover toys of the movie, because, well, yeah, the shiny figures that we had from the movie's toy line back then. Catherine would be established around this point, but, well, as much as I still liked it how they introduced Catherine in the show, but she would still be like, okay, they would have this little soap opera angle going on between Tommy and Kimberly and Catherine, with Catherine being a new student. We would still have like Catherine Sutherland still around in the show, and Jason, Zack, and Trini would be befuddled about Catherine coming in also. Rocky Am and Aisha were like would-be Rangers and trainee Rangers still, and Catherine came in and she would be a Ranger in training or so, but first she would have to go through meeting the Rangers, but then also she would still be the cat monster, the catastrophe monster, if Jason, Zack, and Trini was still around. And what Ranger would fit the whole fear of being around cats as opposed to Zack's fear of spiders and snakes? Trini being fearful of or being allergic to being around cats, maybe, or Jason. Then the changing of the Zords 3-parter would be drastically different. Again, Tommy was still the White Ranger in all this, so with those 3 still around, if they were still to be around, the Shogun Zords, Kimberly, the drama of seeing Kimberly lose her powers would be drastic. And Jason, Zack, and Trini, along with Tommy and Billy, would fend off Rita and Zed's certain evil forces at this point. Catherine wants to overthrow Tommy and Kimberly, wants to make a split to Tommy and Kimberly's relationship, and Jason, Zack, and Trini would go through the drama of seeing Kimberly lose her powers, and again, and would probably trigger some trauma into Jason of all the times he failed to save Tommy from getting his Green Ranger powers lost and stuff, and seeing Jason going through the trauma of seeing one of his old teammates lose her powers in the same fashion Tommy lost his powers, and or actually this would fit Trini the most, since Trini and Kimberly were best friends since the start of the show, so this would mostly heavily affect Trini the most, much like how Tommy, Jason felt with seeing Tommy lose his powers and failed to get the green candle last time back in season 1. So season 3 MMPR, if the original trinity of MMPR would still be around, Trini would be baffled and traumatized or shocked of seeing Kimberly lose her powers and having her the power of the Pink Ranger drained from her life force and everything, and see how that would have dramatically and psychologically screw up Trini, you know, in a way, much like how seeing Tommy lose his powers screwed up Jason in a way once the green candle came in, you know, that domino effect with that green candle. But then after that, Kimberly would probably leave the series at this point. So enter Catherine. Catherine would not be the Pink Ranger, so save her for Zeo. So the remaining of MMPR would just be red, black, yellow, white, and green, you know, blue to mirror and reflect on Kaku Ranger, due to the fact that, well, Trini would be the only lone female Mighty Morphin Ranger, and Kimberly would have left the show. Kimberly's departure from the show would still be around, will still be a thing, but I wouldn't make Catherine the Pink Ranger this point with different shade of pink. Maybe just excise that whole 3-parter altogether and just have Catherine no longer evil and under Rita's control once the brainwashing of, you know, Catherine under Rita's influence was done differently. And then the Master Vial stuff. Then season 3, you would have Rocky, Am, and Aisha fully already been done training with them being Rangers, and wonder if they would take over this mantle. But this would open up the possibility of them soon to be becoming Power Rangers, and how season 3 would have happened differently. Now, I don't know how I would squeeze the Aquitar Rangers if Master Vial didn't do the time reversal stuff. And if only we didn't do the time reversal stuff, the Zeo Crystal would still be a thing. But they would just have to hold on to the Zeo Crystal stuff if Jason, Zack, and Trini. Now, this is where I think they should have did the power transfer. You know, save the power transfer probably through going into Zeo. Jason, Zack, and Trini would just relinquish their their powers, probably to Rocky, Am, and Aisha and Catherine for a while, with Kimberly, left, and she kept the power coin of the Pink Ranger. Then Rocky, Am, and Aisha would finally become probably the red, black, and yellow Rangers this season, then in mid-season 2. And this is where I think Jason, Zack, and Trini would actually make their leave, I think. But then season 3 would have ended in a way if the Mighty Morphin team still had the power and never... I had a lot to think about if I were to rewrite this history of Power Rangers. If this course of Power Rangers was altered, if Jason, Zack, and Trini was to still stay, and then have a proper send-off like Kimberly. Season 3 would be the proper send-offs for those 4 of the original 5. And that way, Power Rangers, I don't know, maybe it will probably be drastic more than it already was. And then going into Zeo, Tommy is no longer the White Ranger. He's the Red Ranger. Billy would not be the Blue Ranger. He would still be the same. He would be more highly advanced in being a tech aide for the Aquitar Rangers. And then the Aquitar Rangers would probably be assisting the Mighty Morphin Rangers. But I wouldn't want to turn the Rangers into children, because that was just... Yeah, I know it happened in the show, but it's just like, if the course of Power Rangers was to be done differently after Tommy's reintroduction as the White Ranger and the Rita and Zed wedding stuff, but we'll talk about all that other stuff later. But some episodes and some events of Power Rangers would still act the same, but if things were done differently with those 3. But then after Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, then must wonder how the course of Power Rangers would have been if they did the Mighty Morphin through Zeo transition differently, with Zack and Trini gone and Jason. Jason would be out at this point, probably save him until, Zeo would still act out the same. But then also, about Aisha, instead of, nothing wrong with Tanya, but I personally think that if they saved Aisha as the yellow Zeo Ranger, we could have still had Aisha for another season. Nothing, not to knock on Tanya or anything, but there's a lot to think about. Just thinking about this Trinity and how I would have done this part of Power Rangers history and how things would have played out. Okay, instead of sending Jason, Zack, and Trini off to a peace conference, but of course in the Boom comics they are the Omega Rangers, but Saban never made that a realization, because I know there have been other ways. If they would have kept the Power Rangers with the original 6 together, Tommy would have been another 6 Ranger, would have donned the Gold Ranger power. Tommy would slowly lose the White Ranger powers, or not a Ranger for a while. It was just the original 5 with the Zeo powers or something like that. Something like that was done in that fashion. But then, of course, again, the controversy with Power Rangers, with the racial, the so-called controversy with the racism, with Zack being black and Trini being Asian thing. If Zeo was done differently, Kimberly and Trini would have their first ever color swap. What if Trini was the pink Zeo Ranger and Kimberly was yellow? Because again, the race swap. Or how about have Aisha be the yellow Zeo Ranger and Kimberly was the... No. Kimberly had already left, but no, Catherine would still be Zeo Ranger 1, and okay, Rocky would have blue Zeo, Adam would still be green. If Aisha was still around, she would be yellow Zeo, and Tommy would finally become the Red Ranger. Billy would still be his tech aide self for Zeo. The power, the command center would be destroyed with the original 3 gone for a while, and bring Jason back the same. Zack and Trini would be, I don't know. The power chamber would still be the same and stuff. The Machine Empire would be the same. But I'm just thinking about how things could have been if the original 3 was around. I don't mean like keep the original 6. I mean, I know it's hard to see the original 6 Power Rangers still retain the same suits for at least 6 seasons throughout the Zordon era. Suppose we had the Mighty Morphin Rangers with the Zeo Zords, and their Mighty Morphin powers will be enhanced by the Zeo crystal, making the powers more stronger. And after, due to the fact the ninja powers were fine, but it seemed like they were not that spiritually strong enough to take down Rita and Zed. So I know it would be hard to do. There's a lot to think about. So what do you guys think? I know I've been going on long enough now. It's been over 45 minutes because, 45 minutes talking about this and thinking about how the Power Rangers would have been done differently. But if Saban also, spiritually though, and if Saban didn't screw over Austin, Walter, and Thuy, these guys would still have something involved with Power Rangers today. And also, if Thuy Trang didn't pass away 20 years ago from a car accident, she would still been with us today. Also, Power Rangers would still play out the same. We would still have Zeo, Turbo, and Space Lost Galaxy and so forth still today. But if Thuy didn't go through being underpaid alongside Walter and Austin, she would still be with us today as well. There's a lot to think about, guys. So what do you guys think about this video and what I thought of what I just said in this video? I mean, think about it, because if the course of Power Rangers was done differently in an alternate universe compared to in our reality, in our universe, all of the stuff I just mentioned over the course of 40, almost 50 minutes would have been altered, but we would still have Zeo, Turbo, and, despite some changes for Zeo, if Tanya was not yellow Zeo and yellow Turbo #1, and Aisha was still a Ranger, things would have been done the same. Things would still play out the same, but it's just in the course of with MMPR's place in Power Rangers history altered a little bit. Things would have been played out differently. So anyway, guys, what do you guys think? So leave a comment down below, share, because there was a lot I had to say about this. So anyway, guys, this was Anthony on Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film. So I would like to thank you guys for listening, and see you guys next time in the next episode. Man, that was a lot to say.